please have an approval of the agenda for tonight?
So moved.
Second.
Any discussion? All in favor?
Aye.
Okay, the agenda is approved. I'd like to do the Pledge of Allegiance at this time, please.
I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Who's doing announcements this evening?
I got the lucky one.
Thank you, Mr. Klett.
Good evening. As we are set to begin the 2018-2019 school year, there are many outstanding things happening throughout our district. This Thursday, August 30th, the elementary schools are having their back-to-school nights from 3 to 5, while the intermediate schools are hosting theirs from 5 to 7. The first day of classes for 2018 to 2019 school year is on Tuesday, September 4th. The fall athletics season is in full swing. This Friday, August 31st, the Purple Knights varsity football team is at home starting at 7 p.m. The girls volleyball has their next home match on September 4th at 6:30 p.m. The boys volleyball is home on September 6th at 6:30 p.m. Girls tennis is home on September 13th at 4 p.m. Girls swimming is home on August 31st and September 7th, both beginning at 5 p.m. Boys soccer is home on August 30th at 6:30 p.m. and September 4th at 7 p.m. Boys and girls cross country has a home meet at Leeson's Park on September 4th beginning at 4:15 p.m. And girls golf is home at Kruger Haskell Golf Course on September 12th at 2 p.m. Be sure to visit our website or follow us on Facebook and Twitter for more information on all great things happening in our district. And since I have the mic, I'd like to wish my wife a happy 42nd anniversary. This concludes tonight's announcements.
Thank you. The next thing on the agenda tonight is recognitions, and our new public information officer, Mr. Vissers, is here to present the recognitions. Thank you.
Thank you. Good evening, Madam President and members of the Board of Education, and a good evening to community members watching online and on cable TV. My name is Brian Vissers. I'm the new Public Information Officer and Community Relations Coordinator with the School District of Beloit. And let me say that I'm absolutely thrilled to be here and be part of this great district. I look forward to working with all of you and promoting all the wonderful things that happen each and every day in our schools. And that does happen each and every day. Each and every day there's dozens and dozens of things out there that we can choose from to promote and happen. Also, I look forward to engaging our stakeholders in the greater Beloit community. Tonight, it's my pleasure to announce that our monthly board recognitions, we are just 1 week away from the beginning of the 2018-2019 school year. With this said, we've had the honor to receive numerous school supplies from companies in the greater Beloit community. These companies that we would like to recognize tonight for their generous donations are Rock Energy Cooperative, State Collections, and Mid-States Concrete Industries. Also, I would like to recognize new employees to the district. We're privileged here tonight to have Sandra Justice, and I apologize if I say your last name incorrectly, Lieva. She is a DLI grade 6 at McNeil, and she is also one of the several teachers that we have that are going to be spending at least this year here in the Beloit School District teaching in the district. I believe also we will have numerous other ones that are here from Spain on exchanges here at future meetings when Tony Bosco is available. So I'd like to recognize her tonight and thank you for coming to the meeting.
Okay, next on the agenda is citizens or delegations wishing to speak. Are there any citizens wishing to speak at tonight's meeting? Okay, then I will not read the required reading for that, and we'll move on to the superintendent's report to the board, the Kids Against Hunger presentation. If you would all introduce yourselves, please, I'd appreciate it. Thank you.
All right. Hello, everyone. My name is Lizzie Sage.
I'm Hannah Wilson.
I'm Benjamin Levy.
We are representatives of the Beloit Memorial Chapter of National Honor Society, and this year we have partnered with Kids Against Hunger to put on a community event that needs 700 to 800 volunteers. It will not only involve the entire city of Beloit, but will also send 250,000 meals to the less fortunate in Guatemala.
Our campaign to host Kids Against Hunger at Beloit Memorial has been almost completely student-led. We have guidance from the National Honor Society advisor, Mr. Flynn, and Mr. Wong, the Kids Against Hunger representative. But communications projects, the presentations, the applications for grants, and the leadership aspects of this project have all been student-focused. We and many other National Honor Society members have contributed their time and effort to support a cause that they truly believe can benefit our community and our world. A big goal for this event is to bring the community together. In the high school, it seems like the various clubs and activities are extremely segregated and unconnected. They all have their own separate spaces and activities, and they rarely seem to interact. But this is not a club event. It is a Beloit event. Similarly, we want people from the community to interact with each other and show Beloit in the positive light it deserves. By contacting churches, businesses, local foundations, and independent donors, we hope to promote awareness for our event, recruit volunteers, and raise money for this worthy cause. So far, we have raised over half the funds needed to host Kids Against Hunger, about $11,000, including $900 that was collected this morning at Convocation. But to make this event that brings Beloit together happen, we are going to need to keep working towards our goal of $20,000.
I was part of a similar event in Janesville called 1 Million Meals, as was Ben. And Mr. Wong, the person who is helping us coordinate Kids Against Hunger, was actually on the team that coordinated 1 Million Meals. By working there, I was exposed to the sheer volume of people that came out just to do community service. There were church groups, 4-H clubs, Girl and Boy Scout troops, families, neighbors, and people who hadn't even met each other before, all working side by side to make the idea of feeding the hungry a reality. That is one of our goals for Kids Against Hunger, to take all the different types of people we have in our diverse city and consolidate them behind a worthy cause.
Kids Against Hunger will bring together the people in this area and give everyone an opportunity to make the world a better place. Connecting the community to volunteer work is incredibly important. Together, we can continue to build a strong, proud, and unified legacy in Beloit. Thank you.
Could I ask you a quick question? You're halfway to your goal of $20,000.
Yes.
Can you tell people how they can contribute if they would like to do that?
We have a Facebook page where we've made an event where you can donate there. We also have several fundraisers set up. We have a Scoopy night scheduled later in September. We've done a flapjack fundraiser at Applebee's. And then through Beloit Memorial specifically, we're doing like a jukebox jams fundraiser where students can pay money to have their song played during lunch.
Oh, that's nice. We're proud of you all. Thank you so much for this excellent work.
Thank you.
Hold on. You're also going to do other presentations, is that correct?
Yes,
Okay.
we will continue to reach out to other businesses as well.
Okay, you guys are doing a great job. I've been able to see this firsthand, and I commend Mr. Flynn, but most importantly, the students. You guys have done a great job. I've listened in on the presentations you've given to the foundations, which you were awarded significant dollars to help to get to where you are today. There's more work to be done. The event will be on November 2nd at the Fieldhouse, and it's going to be a grand event. My hope is that it can help to bring the community together as a whole, and surrounding schools too, because you've been issued a challenge, correct?
Yes.
What was that challenge?
It was to try to involve not only Beloit, but to challenge other schools such as, I know, Turner and some of the Janesville schools and Hananiga to try to rope them in to this event too.
And Mr. Wong, thank you for initiating this and for leading the students in this cause. This is wonderful.
Thank you. And it's fun to do. It's fun to see these kids do what they're doing. And I'm guessing you've learned a little bit along the way about how to run a large function like this, and you haven't seen the beginning of it yet. So the container has been ordered. It's on its way. I'll take care of all the logistics. We have T-shirts coming as well. So it'll be a fun event. I'm hopeful that everybody can be in attendance to it, because anybody that was at the event in 2010, 2011, or 2012 can attest that it's a great event, and it can really bring the schools together as a whole. So thank you for all your efforts.
Thank you.
Okay, we now are at the point where we're going to have a presentation of the history and update of Phase 1, the Beloit 2020 plan. And the reason that I asked for this is we have a new superintendent, we have a new executive business director, we have a new school board, and we have a lot of people who aren't familiar with the history of this whole thing, how it started, where we're at now, and where we need to go still. So I appreciate this, Mr. Winters. Thank you.
Good evening. I will keep this as pithy as possible. To give you just a brief outline of where we started and where we are. What I'm going to do first is I'm going to go through a timeline. That timeline will just give you a very general idea of what went on when. April 20th, 2016, the 4th Street design charrette that highlighted the high school campus as a priority for the city center came into being. On November 22nd, 2016, Beloit 2020 asked the school asked the school board to allow staff to conduct a campus master plan. At that point, it was no longer a Beloit 2020 plan. It is a high school campus plan. So I know that it's a little bit of a misnomer that it's a Beloit 2020 plan. It is not. It's a high school campus plan. And why is that? Because from January 2017 through May 2017, school district staff, City of Beloit staff, and Beloit 2020 representatives met to create this plan. So it was a collaborative effort. The ideas that were bounced around back and forth, to sit there and watch it, it was just amazing. We had architects, we had executive directors of business, we've had the city manager. It was a fantastic thing to watch, to grow. On May 9th, 2017, the draft of the master plan was presented to the school board with no action taken. On May 15th, the plan was presented to the city council at a workshop with no action taken. We'll skip down to July 25th, 2017. The master plan was presented to the school board in full. That was our completed plan. No action was taken. And then on September 26th, 2017, the school board approved the sale of bonds in amount of $5.5 million for Phase 1, which included the Welcome Center, the canopy, the turnaround by the pool, the tennis court parking lot, and the closing of 4th Street. April 30th, 2018, joint school board and city council workshop at Iron Tech, where the city manager affirmed her intent to close 4th Street under administrative rule. August 20th, 2018, 4th Street closed with the barricades. That April 30th meeting was an impressive meeting. I was proud to watch it. I was proud of our district and the city to come together and understand that there is a need for the closing of the street for safety reasons. It was a courageous vote. It was a courageous step. I shouldn't say vote, it was a courageous step by the city manager. And with the backing of the school board vote. Right now, as the Welcome Center, as far as money-wise, for the $5.5 million, $4,992,000 are for the building itself, for the district office itself. For the tennis court parking lot and the roundabout is $145,600. And now I will quantify that these are pre-bid, these last three, okay? The main entrance for the high school, $92,000, and furniture, fixtures, and equipment, $300,000. We do not want to go out for bid at moment for the turnaround or the parking lot. Right now is not a good time to go out for bid. Everybody is really busy. What our strategy is to go out for bid for both parking lots this winter for the job to start in the spring for both parking lots. That's going to give us our most competitive bid, and it's also going to open up the amount of contractors that will bid on the project. So that is why we are holding off until next year on this. Does anybody have any questions before I saunter on?
When you're finished, I'll ask a question or two. Is it complete, or should I?
Unless you wanted to hear more about the other phases that we have. But I think I believe that this was more about phase 1 and where we're at. The district office is on budget so far and on schedule. We've run into a couple of hiccups, but for the most part, it's smooth sailing. We plan on second week of September, we should start to see some structural steel. So things now will start to move quickly. It'll get more looking like a building and less like a big sandbox. So we're moving along very well.
Does anyone have any questions they'd like to ask?
Yes, I do. Can you explain the rationale behind, the resolution was approved on July 22nd of 2017. Mm-hmm. And knowing the parking lot and the turnabout, is there a reason why it was delayed and pushed off until now next year, knowing that we'd have to close the street? Just curious.
Yeah, the parking is what didn't drive the closing. As far as us waiting, again, it was due to the fact of the amount of contractors, and the first quote that I got back was much higher than where we wanted to be at. I do not believe the 4th Street closing has a direct impact on the amount of parking. Yes, we are losing some parking along Middle Street and North Street, but from where I stand, it's inconsequential. I do believe that the parking lot can absorb most of the vehicles. There's also an engineering aspect to it. We just finished designing the roundabout about 4 weeks ago, not even, and we did some tweaking to the roundabout. I just didn't want to throw a roundabout in without thinking about any kind of repercussions. The roundabout that we originally planned, we would have lost some parking. The roundabout that we're putting in, we're actually gaining about 10 stalls on the pool side. So, again, it is a deliberate thought behind the process. I'm not going to throw in a parking lot just to throw in a parking lot. I want to do it right, because I do not want to come back up here in front of you and explain to you why we didn't do this, why we didn't do that. When we go to move forward with the parking lot, I will show you what the parking lot is going to look like. I will show you why we're moving the entrance on the theater side over and the rationale behind it. It's a partnership. So, long story short, that is why. I wanted to take my time and do things right.
Thanks.
Nora?
First of all, Sean, thank you for all the hard work you've put in on this, and I know that you're a detailed person and you like to do things right. Thank you for this presentation as well. I think it was in November of 2016 when the first presentation was made, and I was part of that, but I wasn't sure what happened between then and now.
Sure.
And we're talking about phase 1. I believe, correct me if I'm wrong, but I believe our first interest payment is due October 1st of 2018. Do you know anything about that?
Out of my wheelhouse.
Okay, well, what I was wondering is what the timeline is for phase 1. And that's one question. Do you know?
Sure. We plan on being done with all these items by the end of next summer.
Okay. 1 year.
We do want to talk about, and we need to have some discussion about the canopy, the main entrance. That, I believe, needs to be a discussion.
Okay.
So.
And then just for clarification, I don't know, I've read the city documents, I've read our documents, it seems like I've read like 150 pages of documents. So what I thought I heard you say is the city manager made a bold decision to close 4th Street at this time in preparation for all of the work that will be going on down the road in phase 1. Is that correct? Or did the school district decide to do that? I just
Sure.
wanted to.
On September 26th, the board voted to approve phase 1, which included asking for the city to close 4th Street. As far as Lori's rationale from my conversations with her, it is more about the safety. The video that was shown to us from the officer's body cam, it blew my mind. What I will tell you, out of all the projects that I've been involved in, multi-million-dollar projects, air conditioning, remodeling classrooms, remodeling libraries, 4th Street closing is the one I'm most proud to be affiliated with. Why? That's going to save somebody's life. When you watch a student coming out and they got a phone, they're not going like this. They're going like this. And I can promise you, that was my biggest fear. It was not about a fire. It was not about a gunman. It was about somebody being hit in front of 4th Street. I've seen so many close calls myself. So that particular piece, out of everything that I've done here, is what I'm most proud of, being a part of.
Thank you for that clarification and that testimony, and I'm sure those who are watching our televised meeting had some of those same questions.
Absolutely.
And you've explained it very well. Thank you.
Absolutely.
Does anyone else have any questions? Oh, I have a couple. Could you please, I'm sorry, I missed where you said the point that this became the Beloit School Plan and not the 2020 plan. Did you say on November 22nd?
Yep, that's when we met. That's when the board decided that Beloit 2020 can meet with district staff, to come up with a master plan. That is when it became a group effort. During those meetings, it was not, Beloit 2020 did not run the meetings. It was a collaborative effort. We all had input. So at that point, it did turn into a high school master plan.
But to be clear for everyone that's watching this video, when we voted to fund the projects in phase one, but we haven't adopted any of the other parts of the plan. Although we'd love to see it happen, this is as far as we've gone. It's a beautiful plan. We're all excited about it.
Yes.
But as far as it's gone is we have voted to fund the projects in phase one, correct?
Absolutely. And you're 100% correct, Pam. The rest of the phases, just like my 10-year capital improvement plan, it's a plan. Gotta have a plan. Doesn't mean we have to stick with it, but you gotta have a plan. But it's a fluid plan. This is our dreams right here. This is what we'd like to have. So what is a priority to this board and to this district right now may not be the priority of a board 5 years from now. So this is a great plan. It's something for us to pull from, to draw from.
Or it may not be a priority of the city down the road, because this is cooperation with the city. We
Absolutely.
don't make these decisions about streets.
Absolutely.
Okay, then the other question I have for you is, I remember when we were passing the resolution, we kept hearing 6.3 million versus 5.5. What is the 6.3 million, and where did that come from? And are we missing some of the funding that we need to complete the entire project?
6.3 might have been with, I think that might have included the initial idea of what the building may cost, but that was pared down. I don't remember 6.3. I've got about a million numbers in my head, and that's not one of them.
They both came up the night we voted on the resolution.
Mm-hmm.
Both figures came up at the same meeting.
I think that sure could have been whether or not, because we had a good idea of what the projects were going to cost. We didn't have a definite idea.
So are you saying then that 5.5 million is going to take care of of everything that we listed on that resolution?
Yeah, as of today, yes. As of April or May, we'll see, but I think so. I am cautiously optimistic. Everything is running according to plan.
Okay. Thank you so much. I appreciate it.
Thank you.
Thank you for giving us this update, because we
Absolutely.
were all on different pages and a little bit lost here.
Yeah, absolutely. And anytime you need something, I do want to give a shout out to the Beloit 2020 and to the city for helping us make this all possible. It is a collaborative effort. It is a perfect storm, and we seized the moment. So, thank you.
Thank you. Okay, now we have committee reports. The Communication Committee is first, and David is not here this evening. Okay. Thank you, Ms. Gard.
The Communication Committee met on August 23rd, and those present were, oh gosh, I don't know how to say their names, but we were missing two people, I'll put it that way. And it was my first meeting to attend, and it was our new public information officer, his first meeting to attend. So all of us were rather new in this meeting, and we talked about communication, past, present, and future, and where we might like to go. We talked about putting a press release out about our public information officer so that the community would be aware that we're working hard on our communications within the district and letting our community know what we're doing. And we just pretty much shared a few ideas and how often we might meet. It was more or less a meeting to understand where others were coming from. Anna Kelly, who is a board member or a committee member, talked a little bit about the website and a blog and keeping up to date with information in social media. And Brian had a lot of ideas of that worked very well in the district that he came from that seemed to be very exciting. And so next month we are going to visit one of the schools and talk further about some plans for communication. That's my report.
Thanks. And would you like to continue with the
Am
fiscal?
I the next one too?
Thank you so much.
Okay. First of all, I was sworn into office on the evening of August 14th, and I worked all day on the 15th, thought I was just going to visit this meeting called the Fiscal Committee meeting, and I was actually the chair of it, so I ran it, not knowing exactly what was on the agenda, but again, a new committee, new people, and we kind of got to know one another because I call him Bob Thomas. I don't even know everybody's name yet. Was a new administrator. So we were trying to get to know who all the people would be on this committee. We talked about a budget update. We were given a presentation on the 2018-19 budget and things to look forward to as we move forward in that budget process. We also talked about a policy 733 Rule 2, which had to do with vending and appliance use within the classroom, because there is a cost to the district for just merely running a refrigerator in a classroom. So we wanted to look at that policy and see whether or not we wanted to continue charging $25 a year for those who wanted to have a refrigerator in their room. And then we had a waiver of rental fees to Caritas, and we talked about future meetings. And outside of September, we will be meeting the second Wednesday of the month at 5 p.m. So.
And Ms. Gard, you have room for other members on your committee? Are there openings?
To be honest, Pam, I haven't read all of the things that my committee's charged to do, but I do believe we have at least one. And I think on the communication committee, we might have one too, but I haven't looked through all those details.
All right, thank you.
I'm a week into this.
Thank you. And infrastructure committee is next. Ms. Sanchez, thank you.
Yep. Okay, so the Infrastructure Committee met on August 2nd of 2018. We met at Aldridge Intermediate School. We went over quite a few updates on construction projects that are happening within the district. We also discussed a possible salt shed for salt for the district. We went over the high school kitchen remodel, the Aldridge classroom remodels, an update on the district office construction, the Welcome Center. Gilbank Construction was available to give us some of those updates as they are handling some of those projects. We got a tour of Aldridge Intermediate, and having grown up in the district, wow, there's been some amazing things done in that building. And our next meeting will be on the, what did we set it for? The 6th at 5 o'clock at Hackett.
Thank you. And next is staff committee report from Mr. Wong, please.
That's me.
I'm so sorry.
Okay. The staff committee met on August 14th. All committee members were present except for one. We talked about professional learning communities, PLCs. There was some discussion about scheduling of them, whether or not it's important for them to be after school during the week, or if we can use them, if teachers are allowed to meet during the PD days on Fridays. So it was a good conversation. Mr. Bonds said that he was going to think about ways to collaborate with teachers and find a way to make that time more productive and beneficial for teachers. Then we also talked about climate surveys and exit interviews. So the Executive Director of Human Resources, Tracy, discussed her plans for exit interviews using SurveyMonkey, offering face-to-face, shortening up the letter, making it more user-friendly to try and increase the number of employees who are participating in the exit interviews. And we also talked about the possibility of using a third party to conduct climate surveys. And Mrs. Pels and Mrs. Papke informed us and kind of talked to us about climate surveys that they give to staff, students, and families twice a year. So when we meet again in September, they're going to bring back that information for us and go over their questions and how they've used that information. We also received a staffing update from Human Resources that we are on track to fill the positions necessary for the school year. Human Resources will also be doing office hours in the buildings throughout the year. Our next meeting date will be on September 11th at 5 p.m. at COLAC in room 106.
Thank you, Mr. Larson. And now, Mr. Wong, Student Committee. Thank you.
The student committee met actually 2 dates, August 14th, and at that meeting actually we had the discussion about the addition of the 10 full-time math interventionists, which was later approved actually that evening, and I'm happy to announce that I believe 7 of those positions have been filled at this time, so that's good news to see and hear. We also had an update from Ms. Peltz in regards to the safety, school safety grant, which I believe was just under $275,000 that was received, that will be used in all of the schools, including, I think, to address the windows and also the hardware around the doors, if I'm not mistaken. So we also met on that date and discussed that day and on the 23rd, the specific graduation requirements as it revolves around the math coursework. And this is specific to freshmen and sophomores, which we'll be discussing a little bit later. And the last item of discussion was the cell phone policy update, which we will also be addressing shortly here as well. The students' next meeting will be on September 11th at 4 p.m. in room 106 at COLAC.
Thank you. I have a question before we continue. Michelle? Yes. Do we have the corrected minutes that are in the consent list? Do we have the corrected ones at our tables?
They should be there. There's 3 sets. You have the staff ones, and then behind the staff ones are the 2 special board meeting ones. They were stapled together.
You have them? Okay. Okay, thank you. So we're now at the consent list. Is everyone comfortable with a motion that would include everything in the consent list, or is there anything that someone would like to have removed?
I'm one, because I wasn't at all of the meetings that are reported in the minutes on the consent list. I'm comfortable in voting for those meetings that I was present in, but if there are board members that just want to give a brief overview of the minutes of those meetings that I was not part of, then I wouldn't have a problem voting.
Why don't we just approve them at the next meeting?
Okay.
And pull them off for now. Which ones would you like to have removed?
Anything before August 14th, which includes all of the special meetings.
All except for the last, except for E.
All except for E, and I was only part of that 3-hour meeting for 1 hour.
Okay, Michelle, would there be any problem with approving these all at the next meeting? All the minutes? Okay, so then I'd like a motion to remove everything from the consent list except for approval of the June financial summary. Item 10A.
I move removal of everything from the consent list except for the approval of June financial summary, item 10A.
To clarify, that would be tabling until the next meeting.
Correct.
Okay, is there a second? Is there any discussion?
I'm unclear as to why we're tabling it.
We only have,
Nora and I were not at those meetings, so what will we be changing by holding off on approving those minutes?
One more board member might be present next month.
You and I were not there, so,
that's why,
but we can't act on the minutes because we don't know what actually happened at those
that's
board
what we're
meetings.
saying.
So.
We're just going to bring them back when Mr. Wilson is here.
Okay, so
Because he was
you
here
want
for
the four
this.
that were there,
Yeah.
okay.
Thank you. All right, all in favor? If there's no more discussion, all in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? Okay, so we will table items 9A through E until the next meeting. And we'll now have a motion for approval of the June financial summary.
So moved.
Second?
Second.
Thank you, Nora. Okay, is there any discussion on the financial summary?
I have questions. When I'm looking at this original budget, revised budget, what's the number that, I'm assuming the original budget's what we started the year with, revised budget's up about $1 million. So how do we get to be $1 million over the budget, and where does that money come from? Or am I not reading it right? It's under section from 111 to 182 under salaries. It shows 42,220, and yet the revised is 43,300. So I just need to know what that entails.
Okay, Ms. Armstrong, would you mind answering a couple of questions, please, at the podium? Thank you so much.
Okay, Mr. Klett, your questions about the salaries, most of the changes between the original budget and the revised budget is when the budget was adopted in October by the board. We did not have all of our title funds in, we did not have all our grant allocations in. So once we got all of those allocations in, it becomes a revised budget because it's not the adopted budget, which is how we cut the total savings that the deficit, the original budget was a deficit budget of 1.4, I believe it was. 1.4 million, and we cut that down to an $859,000 deficit budget once we had all our grant funding. And a majority of our teachers and support staff and things like that are mostly Title I funded, which is why you see such an increase in that salary and benefits line.
Okay, so Joanne, we basically know the money's going to come in, so we're not draining money out of our reserves for that, correct?
Correct. We only budget our grants for what we are allocated, and we exactly match those expenses to the expected revenues. So our grants are always totaled dollar for dollar.
Okay, and Mr. Klett's my dad.
Oh, sorry. Any
Thank
other
you.
questions?
Are there any other questions? Any
Can I
other discussion?
ask one thing? Maybe the board's already done it, but it would help, it's been many years since I've been on this board, to have a financial review of school funding, how everything works. That would be possible?
School
To schedule
funding,
that in the
we have
future?
scheduled, but we should have a budget workshop.
And love that.
Right.
Thank you.
Yeah. Thank you. Okay, with no other discussion, all in favor of approval of the June financial summary, please?
Aye.
Aye. Any opposed? Okay.
Clarification, please. Who moved and who seconded?
I second.
Thank you.
Yeah. Okay. The next thing is construction of a salt shed, and we heard that this was discussed in committee in infrastructure. Thank you. Thank you, Mr. Winters.
So, believe it or not, when we salt our parking lots, we buy semi-loads full of 50-pound bagged salt. We lift the pallet up, we cut them individually, dump them into a salt hopper, a salt spreader. Very laborious, very expensive. Last year, which is kind of a mild year, we used 132,000 pounds of salt at 50 bags apiece at a cost of almost $17,000. What we want to do, what we propose to do to go out for RFP, is to build a salt shed so we can buy bulk salt. Our cost would be just about cut in half for the amount of salt. That does not include labor. That is just for the salt. What that does, besides the cost, it helps with a quicker turnaround. So if we fill up our salters, we go salt, let's say, the high school, we've got to refill again. So now you're going back, spending 45 minutes cutting and dumping. This would literally be a skid steer, 2 loads, 5 minutes, done, down the road. I'm working with Angus Young right now to get some budgetary costs and design work. And what I'm proposing is to build a salt shed at our Madison Road maintenance shop area. I don't want to speculate on the cost of the shed, but preliminary thoughts, 7 years or less for a payback, which is huge. That's about it.
Any questions?
No, I have a technical question for you. Do our committees operate the same way as the board, that there needs to be a quorum before we vote something along?
Yes.
Because this was moved along in a 2-to-1 vote. I mean, there wasn't a quorum at the
Well, we
committee.
have, our quorum for committees is 3.
There's 3?
Yeah, for every committee, so there was barely a quorum.
Okay, and abstention, Joel, I see you abstained. You're part of the project, I take it? Correct. Okay. It sounds like a good idea to me, so just want to be making sure.
Thank you for checking. Okay, is there a motion or another question? Ms. Gardner?
When would you like to have this done by? I'm thinking probably November or before the bad weather comes and.
No, this wouldn't be completed probably until next spring.
Next spring, okay. That was my question. And then I would like to make a motion that we would approve moving forward with obtaining quotes to build a new salt shed and to work with suppliers for procuring bulk salt.
Is there a second?
I second.
Okay, so there's a motion and a second to approve moving forward with obtaining quotes to build salt shed and to work with suppliers for procuring bulk salt. Is there any more discussion? All in favor? Aye. Any opposed? Okay, the motion passes.
Thank you.
Thank you. Okay, next is policy 133, filling board vacancies, and 133, Rule 1, board appointment procedures.
I'd like to make a motion to approve policy 133 for board appointment procedures for final reading, but I do have questions on Rule 1, so I will move forward on policies 133, Rule 1 for final reading.
Okay, you're moving to pass 133?
Yeah, but not the Rule 1.
All right. To be fair, Mr. Wilson is not here tonight, but he did ask in the first reading that we leave the wording that is struck in 133 of the remaining members. He asked that we leave that because it's in the state statute. I had removed it after getting clarification from WASB of what it means. They said it's the rest of your board, whoever's here at the time. And it didn't seem necessary to have it, especially since it isn't a statute, but it should have come to us.
Need a second before we do the discussion? Where's that?
Oh. Second?
I'll second.
Thank you. So it should have been presented tonight with those words left in it per our last meeting of first reading. We can remove them at this point in second reading, or we can leave them. That's what I'd like to have you decide.
I would like to make a friendly amendment to my motion that we leave the wording in so that reflects state statutes.
Okay. All right. Is there any other discussion?
And I'll second that.
Okay. Any other discussion? All right. So the motion is to pass policy 133, leaving in the words of the remaining members that are in front of us. They're struck, but we're going to leave them in.
Correct.
So the only change to this policy is adding within 60 days. And in the third paragraph, we're striking regularly scheduled. Okay, any other discussion? All in favor? Mr. Klett?
Two things. Number 7, it says in writing, can we do electronically? Is that the same thing? Because of the way we're moving forward in today's world, it makes sense to somehow include that wording, and then under the box on the bottom.
I only propose that
We're just
one.
on 133.
Round 1, so I'm ahead of you, so well, you know it's coming.
Thank you. Okay, all in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Any opposed? Okay. Policy 133 passes as presented and discussed. Now, Ms. Guard, policy 133, rule 1, you were going to make a motion on that?
Yes, I'll make a motion. I have some comments, but
Okay.
I would like to make a motion that we look at policy 133, rule 1, and approve it for, I believe it's a first reading on this one. Is that correct? The final?
Final, it came with the other one last month.
Okay. I have a few corrections.
Corrections or suggestions?
Suggested
Okay.
correction, or suggestions, I
Go
should
ahead.
say.
Are you making a motion first, or we?
Well, I think you have to make a motion, then discussion.
Okay. So did you make a motion?
Yes.
To pass it? Okay.
I'll second.
All right, now would you like to discuss your suggestions?
On number 4, and I'm looking on page 40, I would like to take out the sentence that states, board members will be provided with copies of the candidates list and all application materials submitted by the candidates. I think the sentence before, within 3 days, I think the sentence before just gives the board secretary the duty of getting this information to the board members, and a lot of our stuff is done on our website in our closed session section for board members. So I think that's, she doesn't need to provide us copies unless we ask for it. I don't think we need that sentence.
Okay, is there anything else that you'd like to bring up on this one?
Well, I had a question in number 7, but I think Jeff has more than I. And then my only other point is at the bottom of these updated policies, if we could just put also reviewed on the date that we are reviewing them.
Yes.
So those are my 2 comments.
I believe Michelle does that when she types them up.
I don't think so. Okay.
Are there any other comments? Because maybe we can think of a way to amend this.
If we would include electronic notification instead of writing, or combination, it makes sense to me. And then the other question I have is on the bottom, heaven forbid, but what if there are less than 3 board members? What happens?
What item are you looking at?
The very last one where it says if you can't make a decision, you will randomly draw 3 board members' names. Well, what if we're at 2? What if you're a rotten president, we're at 1? Did I say that? I'm sorry. Gotta lighten up the mood here. Everybody's so serious.
You know what, I actually considered writing a third paragraph here, not thinking that what if there were two, but thinking, well, what if all three people voted for three different candidates? And then I thought I was going overboard, but if you're going to suggest it, I think actually the other procedure I heard about was you draw a name of a candidate out of a hat. So I could see us adding another box here and saying that if this first procedure of having board members' names drawn and randomly have them drawn and then have them vote does not work and still does not have a majority, then you have the board secretary draw a name out of a hat.
I have a solution for you.
Okay?
Of the remaining members, whatever that odd number would be, that's the number you draw. So if there's 6 board members left, you would have 5. If there's 4 members, 3. If there's 2 members, 1. You draw an odd number out of the hat. That's who picks your next board. So it doesn't matter how many there are.
I see.
There'll always be an odd number. So you're just going to draw 5 names, 3 names, 1 name.
Then there's still your question of what if there's 2 board members?
You draw an odd number. You draw one name. That
you have
person
one
picks it.
person.
That person picks it.
That's not a majority, though. I mean,
You're not going to have a majority, so you're going to have to always have an odd number. If you're
Or
going
you
to go
draw-
the route you're going, you're going to have an odd
or
number.
you draw the name of a candidate in that case.
If you got down to 2, you might as well just draw the name of the candidate.
Mhm.
Not that it'll ever happen, but when you say it won't happen, it happens. Who would have thought we'd be where we're at
I
this
know,
year?
I
So
agree. Do you think we should have this go back for more work and come back next month, or?
I don't think it'll hurt any because there's no hurry for this. I don't think
I
anybody's
hope there's
quitting
no
today.
hurry. Okay, so, could we have a motion to table the motion to approve this policy, Rule 1?
I think the correct motion is to postpone to a certain date.
Either way.
Table to date certain.
Table to a
Date
certain.
certain.
Okay, so
It would be September.
we would, to our next business meeting.
Yeah, September 20. The 11th is a special meeting, not a business meeting. True. Should go to the next business meeting.
Yeah.
24th.
So if somebody would like to,
I'd like to make a motion that we table this until the next business meeting then.
okay, is there a second for that?
I'll second that.
Okay, any more discussion? All in favor?
Aye.
Okay, so policy 133, Rule 1 is tabled until the next business meeting. Yes.
Would you like us to give to Michelle those corrections that we discussed so that she can update those suggestions? Or would you like
But
them?
I think what we might do is write up a couple of different scenarios and bring them back.
Okay, thank
Yeah.
you.
I mean, if someone wants to help with that, that's great. But that's what I think we should do, probably. Okay. The next thing on the agenda is policy 187, public participation at meetings. Tell me what page this is on, I just lost it.
43.
Oh, 42. Okay. Is there a motion?
I'll make a motion that we approve the revisions of policy 187, public participation in board meetings for final reading.
I'll second.
Is there any discussion?
You know I can't go quietly on this one.
That's okay, but my laptop, my iPad is flipping all over the place, so I keep losing my spot.
We've
Okay.
got right now, I believe, a 3-minute time limit, correct?
Yes.
And we're talking about yielding time to the speaker with no cap, correct?
No, you yield your 3 minutes.
No, but if you have 30 people in the room, I could yield 30 times. And now I've got 90 minutes, and now the whole meeting's gone. So I would recommend that if you're going to yield time, that there be a time limit, or if the discussion is repetitive where the same people are saying the same thing over and over and over again, that we be allowed to cut off discussion unless there's something new to be said. It's not fair to the people that come here for other things to listen to a filibuster, and this policy is open to filibustering. So I have concerns on this, the way it's written.
Would anyone like to make any additional comments or respond?
Just reading this for the first time in a long, long time, the points that Jeff made, I actually thought of two. Should there be a time limit? I don't know. It seems to me that not too long ago this was a hot discussion with participants, and I was not part of that, so I'm not sure what the rest of the board members might think, but I do agree with Jeff that there is potential for more and more people to be discussing the same item, and I don't know if we want to give everybody a certain amount of time to speak. I have been on this board where we have announced at the beginning of the meeting that because of the crowd, that the president has made the decision before anybody says anything, that tonight we'll limit our comments to 60 seconds or 1 minute. I mean, I've been part of meetings where they've been limited, but this policy doesn't say that you can do that. So because I wasn't part of all that happened a couple months ago, I guess I would refer to the board members who were here and what they have to say.
Does anyone else like to say anything?
I think I would be in support of maybe allowing only 2 or 3 people to, to give their time to someone else, so that, one person doesn't have 30 minutes to speak. But I know that the feeling was that we have a policy in place. I don't want to change the rules for people when they come in the room. They come in expecting something's going to happen a certain way. So I don't want a situation where, we see a lot of people see in the boardroom and then we say, okay, well, because of the number of speakers we have, you're only going to have 60 minutes, when some of them have prepared what they're going to say and they may have, planned for their 3 minutes. So I want to be fair to everyone who wants to participate in the process. But I would be willing to consider, only allowing 3 people maybe to give their time, or 1 person to take time away from 3 people,
There is a way to solve it relatively easily with language, and that is to simply say that a person may defer, who wishes to speak may defer his or her time to another speaker, and then say, however, no individual speaker will be allowed to speak for more than 10 minutes. We can play with that and wordsmith it if you'd like and bring it back on the 24th.
How do you address the issue? I agree with everything you're saying here. How do you address the issue of the same topic being talked about? Because if you have 5 people that line up and then you have 3 people that they each get 10 minutes, I mean, we could be here for an hour discussing the same topic.
That's true, and you can add language too that simply says that it'll be limited to new information.
What you can do, John, what's been done in the past is if you've got 20 people out there, you can say, do all 20 of you agree with Speaker Charles? Let the record show that we have 20 people here that are in favor of the school board acting in this manner.
Yeah.
Which should suffice, because you've got 20 people saying, we want you to hear what we're saying. But there's no policy that supports that. But the president does have the right to ask it no matter what, if the audience would agree. If the audience doesn't agree, then they have every right to go there and speak for 3 minutes, the way our policy is written. Mm-hmm. And I'm not looking to cut off public speech, but on the other hand, it gets to a point where he's saturating and everybody else is here for something else, is sitting here till 10 o'clock at night.
Well, and I think the board needs to keep in mind that the board business meeting is the board's meeting. It's a public meeting of the board, but it's the board's meeting and the board's business. It's not the public's business. And consequently, you have every right to put limitations around people's participation.
Pam, was this a committee or is this a board recommendation?
All of our policies now come from the board. I feel strongly that we should allow anyone to speak that comes into this room because they're here because they want to speak, and just because someone else got up before them doesn't mean they should lose their opportunity. They might want to say the same thing in a different way. They might think that they have a better way of convincing us, and I think it's very important to let them all speak. I will agree that saying that you can yield your time to a certain person should be capped. I think it should be more than 15 minutes because we have had some topics here where someone has spoken for 30 minutes and it's important stuff we're hearing.
It can be.
It can be.
It can be a nuisance as well. So that's a fine line. I mean, but instead of having this discussion now, I don't know how we do this, but I recommend it go back to the board for discussion and not take a vote on it. So I don't know how to make that motion right now. It's been many years since I've done this, so.
Well,
I mean, you can like the motion, if it passes, but I would.
is the motion right now, Michelle,
It's
could
been
you
seconded.
read back the motion, please?
The current motion that I have is that policy 187, public participation at board meetings, be approved for final reading, and that was moved by Nora Gard and seconded by Wendy Sanchez, as is how you have it in your packet.
Okay.
After hearing the discussion, I would like to table this until our next business meeting. I know we did it on the other motion, and I'm wondering if we can do it for this.
Just do it by motion.
Yeah, I'd like to make a motion to table this policy till our next business meeting.
Okay, is there a second?
I'll second.
Is there any discussion? Okay, the motion is to table policy 187 until the next business meeting in September. All in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? Okay, policy 187 will be tabled until the September business meeting. All right, next we have, and I'll need Mr. Bonds to help with this if he's, yeah. The policy 345.6 Rule 1, specific graduation requirements revision. First reading. Thank you, Mr. Bonds. If you could tell us a little bit about why this is coming to us, and it came out of committee, correct?
Yes, it came out of committee. This is actually the second time it actually came to the full board.
Says here first reading. I'm confused.
We tabled it the first time?
Oh, okay, it's been tabled, so it has not gone through first reading yet.
Correct.
And this was changed from the first presentation, correct?
Yes, it was. So what you see in front of you now is the new motion that was approved out of the student committee on the 22nd, I believe it was.
Madam President, I have a question.
Go ahead, Ms. Gard.
Mr. Bonds, I'm just curious, on page 45, it says personal finance 1/2 credit beginning with the class 2019 in this policy. Don't we already offer that, or is this, because it says beginning with the class of 2019, I'm wondering if the word beginning needs to be there, if we are already doing it, or have we been doing it? I'm
No,
confused.
this is new. And
Okay.
so one of the members of the student committee thought it was important to establish it for the class of 2019. So
Okay.
that's why we added it in there,
Okay, so then,
not the graduating class or the,
are we talking this September through May 2019? Or are we talking next year, 2019 through 2020?
no, we're starting this year.
Okay, so I guess that's the reason why I brought the question forward. We're starting school in a week. Are there some students that already have this? I'm just kind of confused with the word beginning, being that class schedules have already been put together, and I'm just wondering.
It moved as a recommendation by someone from the committee.
Uh-huh.
I don't believe it's necessary, but someone on the committee thought it was necessary to establish the grade level that it would impact first.
Okay, thank you.
If I could just add, typically when anything changes with regards to graduation requirements, you don't hold students who are already in the high school under existing graduation requirements to that standard. You always impose the new requirement on an incoming class so they have a chance to catch up and go through it.
That's correct.
On the policy that we're looking at, it says that still only 3 credits of math would be required.
Yes.
But when I read the minutes for the students committee, Heidi Andre pointed out that that would have to increase to 4. It's on page 13 in our packet.
Correct, and that's the motion that was tabled. And then we went back to the student committee the second time around, and that with the new modifications that were made and approved, it took care of that
Okay.
issue. So that is no longer an issue with additional credits being needed for students to graduate.
Okay, thank you.
I have a question that might be a typo here. In the box on page 46, in item number 4, it says, students who have successfully completed algebra, geometry, and algebra 2 before second semester of their junior year are exempt from this requirement. Is that correct, or should that be?
That was correct at the time. Again, that was one of those moments where we thought we left the committee with it reading the way we wanted to.
Okay.
And before today, I was going to ask the board for a friendly amendment to actually strike the last part of that says before second semester of their junior year. So that is the friendly amendment that I'm asking the board to approve now. So the official motion would
Strike that entire sentence?
no, just the portion I read, which is before second semester of their junior year.
Okay, so if you've completed algebra, geometry, and algebra 2, you don't have to,
You are exempt from the requirement, yes.
so, okay.
So that's why the friendly amendment, actually, Board Member Wong, I sent that motion. Can you read that? And that will clarify it all.
The friendly amendment that I'd like to add would be to administration recommends the approval of a revision to policy 345.6, Rule 1, specific graduation requirements, specifically requiring students to take a math class each semester during their freshman and sophomore year. Students who have successfully completed algebra, geometry, and algebra 2 are exempt from the requirement starting with the class of 2019.
So we have some students that take some of these classes in intermediate school.
Do we need a second?
That is correct.
Oh, I thought you were reading what it would be. I'm sorry, I didn't know you were actually making, I'm sorry, I thought you were reading what the motion would be. Excuse me. Okay. There's a motion and a second. Now I'll ask my question. If a student took these classes in intermediate school,
They would be exempt from being required to take 2 straight years of a math course.
would they have to take any math courses before junior year?
No, but because they are required to have 3 credits to graduate, many would naturally take math.
Okay, but not necessarily before the junior year.
Correct, but most students do. Most of our students take math, either, at least one math course their freshman year, maybe one their sophomore year, and then required to take one more before the end of that.
Okay.
But because of our block schedule, some students can actually finish math. The upper level kids can actually finish math if they would like to. After sophomore year, they would no longer have to take a math course according to our graduation requirements, because they can get them completed, all 3 credits.
Thank you. Any other questions or comments?
One comment. I mean, kids that are running at that pace, chances are they're going to be taking calculus and moving up the ladder if they're that fast along. So I don't think that that's really an issue that we need to be concerned about.
Yep, and the exemption allowed them to not force those kids to even take even higher level math. The goal is just to make sure we have all of our students, or more of our students, meet the requirements deemed ACT ready, which are those 3 courses listed there.
All right.
Anthony, I need to clarify a couple of things for me, please. So with the block system, when you say freshman and sophomore year, semester is half a year or full year?
Half a year.
So you're asking math class, they have to take 4 math classes then, according to, am I reading this wrong? So you have to take math freshman and sophomore years each semester. That's 4 credits, correct?
No, because it depends, because there's different pathways for students. For example, all of our classes now are for 9th graders. You could take pre-algebra, algebra. They are year-long courses. A student receives one math credit, and they receive an elective credit. So that year, that freshman year, they only receive 1 math credit. So sophomore year, when they become a sophomore, same thing happens. It's a year-long course. They receive 1 math credit and 1 elective credit. So they are not, in essence, needing additional math credits. That's why we don't need to increase that number.
When I look at the graduation requirement, it says 3 credits.
Correct. 3 credits.
So you're saying I'm only getting 3 credits for math, and I'm applying 1 to a elective?
Correct.
So we're forcing kids to take 4 math classes.
We're requiring kids to take more math, and they're receiving credit, for that.
But yet it's not needed for graduation. And these graduations are our standards or state standards?
State standards.
So you have to have 3 credits. We're making them take 4, and if a kid's failing, I still can't get over that. We're forcing a child to take something that doesn't appeal to them. They're not going to need it the rest of their life. And the other thing I have a question on with this is we're having children or students pick academies, and I would think that the academies would be recommending the classes that they would need to be successful in the academy that they choose. But we're forcing them to take back-to-back math classes, which may or may not be their cup of tea, and all in the name of an ACT score, which, are we benefiting us or are we benefiting the student? That's my question on that.
The question is both. We want to make sure kids are as prepared as possible when they have to take the ACT, because they all are required to take the ACT.
I know that, and that's the frustrating part, because that's a state requirement. So, but I'm still, when you have a child taking a class that they don't want to be in, and they have no interest in it, and they've already met their minimum requirement, I just struggle with that, because if I was on my own, I would be dropping that class, as I did in college many times. So that's just a concern that I have, that we're gonna have a student taking classes they're not going to excel in. It's going to affect their GPA, and it's something that they probably will never use the rest of their life. It's just my.
Mr. Wong?
Can I chime in with that? Also on the board document that's also in the packet, you'll see that I provided the list of the courses. So students, again, pre-algebra is a course that student can take. So if it is a student that would like to pursue a career in the trades, there are also math courses that are available for students to take that are not algebra or geometry. So it doesn't say that they have to take algebra or geometry. It just says they have to take additional math. The goal is to make sure we're providing more students with more exposure to math. So it doesn't require in this policy they must be on the path for those courses, just as you have to be in more math.
Okay, so you do have the option of lining something up to what my interest is, which is my academy. Is that what you're saying? So the math courses I can take will be more of my interest because that's the academy that I'm in.
Potentially, because there are math for technical careers 1. There's math for technical careers 2. So there are other courses that students can typically take.
I'm good. Thank you.
One of the concerns with the math requirements was the extremely poor test scores that we have throughout the district in math specifically. And I think that in regards to this policy, having students be able to take a full year of pre-algebra in 9th grade at a much slower pace was recommended versus trying to get them, like you said, to take a class that they maybe don't have an interest in. If we stretch it over a year-long period of time, the success rate, the hope is that it's going to increase. To say that kids are not going to need math in their life, I think is, I don't know, I'd have a hard time understanding that. But, I mean, every career that anybody could go into, but there's going to be some type of math, whether in general life skills.
Okay, we have a motion and a second. Any further discussion? Seeing none, all in favor of policy 345.6, row 1. All in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Any opposed? Okay, policy 345.6, row 1 passes. We're now at policy 443.5, student use of cellular telephones, first reading. And this came also, I believe, out of the student committee, correct?
Yes, it did.
Okay. Is there a motion?
I move approval of the revisions and layover of policy 443.5, student use of cellular telephones for first reading.
I'll second.
Okay, is there any discussion on this policy? Ms. Gard?
I like the way the policy reads. I remember when we did this, but we also have, what is it? We're talking about the new storage. Yonder is a cell phone storage initiative, but I'm wondering if we should put something regarding that storage initiative in this policy. That's what I'm wondering.
I would not, just because it's a brand new.
Oh, it's a
contract that we may not keep.
Okay.
Yeah.
That was my question.
I had a couple of questions, or would you like to go first?
I was just going to comment, that's exactly why, because there might be some other technology and other systems that would come into place later on, and then we'd have to change it. Yes.
Okay, thank you.
I'm wondering why the last line in section 1 is struck, unless the teacher has given permission to students for an educational purpose. Couldn't there be a case where a teacher has said, I want you to pull your cell phones out, we're going to do this?
Well, that's one of the reasons why we moved to the policy. We want to make sure that this policy supported not only students but staff, and making sure that at no time that cell phones would be out. As we discussed, and we discussed it not only with teachers, but we also discussed it with our instructional technology support staff to find out, is there for any reason that a cell phone would be used that our other devices wouldn't satisfy, such as all of our students and teachers have access to iPads. And everyone agreed that there isn't anything that a cell phone could do that our iPads could not.
Okay. And then in number 2, why not make it against policy? We're talking about middle school or intermediate students here. Okay, with high school, we said you will not have them out in class at any time, but you can take them out in between. Intermediate school, we're saying you don't use them during the school day at all. So why aren't we saying make it against policy for them to have them out at all, like we are at the high school in the classroom?
Are you talking about for the intermediate school students, or are you talking about for high school
Yeah,
students
number
at this
two,
time?
in all other levels, it says.
Yes.
Why aren't we just saying you cannot have them out at all, like we're doing in the high school classroom?
I mean, if that's something that you would like to offer as a revision, I guess that's something we could go back and reflect on and see if that's something that's would
Because
meet
I
our
think
needs.
it's-
I still want to, sometimes when we make decisions like this is when we end up having to table again because, you know, I don't want to make a rash decision like without having to, again, go back to the committee, really think about how is this really going to impact the intermediate schools. I think it sounds like a pretty reasonable modification, but I just don't want to make a rash decision right now. I guess if you're really certain that's something that we should
Well, it just
revisit,
seems
we can
like
revisit and come back.
The high school, you're saying you will not have that cell phone out and visible during class at all.
Correct.
And in the middle school, you're saying you can carry it around basically, but don't turn it on during the day. Why would they have it out? Ms. Gard?
I might be able to shed some light on that. This policy was put together at least 3.5 years ago. And at that time, cell phones in the younger grades, they were not used as much. And so that's part of the reason what I remember anyway, why that was written the way it was. And things have changed in the last 3.5 years with the use of cell phones in younger students. So that's why I think it's there.
So would you think that to say don't have them out at all is the right thing to do?
I think it would be fair to have it the same.
Consistent.
Yeah. But I don't know what your committee would think, but I think it sounds fair.
Can I ask the board to continue to move it forward and approve it? And I'll have additional discussion not with the committee as well as our intermediate school principals. And I can always bring the policy back in the future if needed. I think right now the policy addresses the needs and the issues we have at the moment.
It's a first reading.
First reading, right. How about we make the change, have it go through first reading, and you check back with the student committee? Would that be all right?
That's appropriate.
There's a motion, correct?
Yes. Well, one second. Actually, because of the timing, we need the policy in place for the high school. So we want the new modifications for the high school to be in place. So that's why I'm asking if we can approve the policy now. I can always bring the policy back mid-year or even a month from now if the intermediate school principals would like to do something else.
I think we can waive policy on this, but we'd have to have a motion, and I'm not sure we'd have to vote on this one first.
Well, Michelle, could you please read the motion that we have right now on the table?
Motion.
The current motion on the table is that that Larson moved approval of the revisions and layover of policy 443.5, student use of cellular telephones for first reading, and that was seconded by John Wong.
Okay, so then I would need a motion to waive policy and amend.
Can we do something different?
Yeah.
Vote, and then we have another motion.
Can
May
we-
I make a suggestion? I'm sorry.
I
Go
was going
ahead.
to say, can we pass it, eliminating number 2, bring number 2 back at a later date? Because to me, it sounds like the high school is the biggest issue. I think everybody agrees that the high school policy is fine. Let's pass what's fine and bring it back.
That's
on
what
the
I was trying to
other-
ask for, was a motion to, an amendment to pass this in one reading and then have it come back later for more discussion on the intermediate level.
If I may?
Yes.
And I realize there are board practices and things that you have done over time, but there is absolutely nothing that requires the board to take action on a first reading. The point of a first reading is to, in fact, have the very discussions that you're having and suggest the amendments you would like to see. And then, once the amendments are made and brought back for a second reading, that's when you take action. There's no need whatsoever to take any kind of action on a first reading.
Dr. Childs, I think Mr. Bonds was trying to say that he would like this passed before school starts. If you're,
I understand.
if you're fine with waiting?
I understand. I'm just telling you, I know you're struggling with trying to figure out a way to do this on a first reading. There are 2 ways to do it. You can just simply not vote on it and have it come back amended for action at a board meeting, or you can waive your first reading policy and take action tonight
That's what I'm proposing.
at the first reading.
Okay, so that's what I proposed, was that someone offer an amendment to waive policy that requires 2 readings and pass this tonight in 1 reading as presented tonight.
Do we have to vote on the motion first?
Yeah, I think we have to vote on that.
No, you have to amend your motion to waive policy and have it go in 1.
So
If
you
you have to amend the motion.
So if I amended the motion, or if I made the motion, I amend it.
Someone else should amend it.
Yeah.
Nora, would you like to?
I would like to amend the motion, and I would like to make a motion that we waive policy to have this approved after the first reading.
Okay, is there a second for the amendment?
I'll second the amendment.
All right, all in favor for the, any discussion? All in favor for the amendment?
Can you read the amendment back, please?
Michelle, could you read it back, please?
I don't think you can do it while you're doing it.
I have that the amendment is to waive the policy and approve this policy as presented tonight, 443.5, student use of cellular telephones, in 1 reading.
And it was seconded. Is there any discussion?
Okay. Obviously an oversight on our committee, but so if this is passed the way that it is, it still will be the policy in the intermediate schools. The phones will not be out. Just want to make that clear.
That phones may be out, but not on during the school day.
Permitted before and after school, except otherwise noted. The school day includes the start of first class and the end of the last class of
So
the
they
day.
they can be using the phones before and after school.
Right.
But they can.
Not be during. In
They
the
can't use them
intermediate
during
and
the
grade
day.
schools.
But this policy does not say that they can't take them out and have them in their possession during the day, and that's what I was questioning. It seems to me, I mean, I would like to see them consistent, and if it's a matter of before school starts, having the rules spelled out to the kids, it seems like it's the right thing to do them both now, but.
But I'm not a big fan of waiving policy, for one. 2, if you pass it as it is, and you're going to have an issue with lower level elementary schools with, what do you do with a 4th grader takes his phone out and turns it on at lunch hour? Are you going to suspend them? Are you going to do what with them? I mean, I think we're in a rush to get this through. I don't think we're doing the right thing. I think I would rather, I know Anthony wants this done, but I'd rather have it come back and be done right. And I'm not a big fan of waiving policy, because I don't think this is a good policy the way it's written with what John brought up.
Could I ask what happens in the high school right now? What will be the consequence if a student takes out his phone during class?
Well, they will be, the code of conduct would be enforced.
And do you know what that is?
It could be insubordination, it could be classroom disruption. I mean, there are several codes that could be used for a student.
So
It just
it's covered
depends.
in the code of conduct?
It is.
I mean, I don't think we need to.
Well, I got a question for Dr. Childs. Do we actually need a policy to enforce putting the phones in those bags? Can we just do it? Do we have to have a policy that says that?
No, I don't think you do. It's a change in practice, and I think that the board has, as I understand it historically, and when these kinds of practices change, wanted to take action on it. But I don't believe it's absolutely necessary. I think it's something that can be done as a procedure that the schools will enforce. And I don't see anything that would prohibit Mr. Bonds from moving forward with it in the buildings. You may find that there be some kickback from people because there isn't any board policy that talks about use of cell phones, and that could be something of a problem we'd have to deal with, but we'd have to deal with it at that time. So the short answer to your question is no, it doesn't absolutely have to be a matter of policy. But I would think at some point it would be prudent for the board to have some kind of a policy on cell phone use.
I believe what we're reading is the cell phone policy that you could just go ahead and use just as it is without, because it's already policy.
That's what I was going to ask, is there anything new in here, or is it just the line
one
struck?
line.
It was just the one line being struck, and so we were simply trying to just strike that one line until the lively conversation. So,
Okay, so, all right, so it has consistently been inconsistent between high school and intermediate school. And I understand why. So we have a motion and a second to pass this in a single reading, and all that is happening here is they're striking out something. They're saying the teachers cannot have the kids take their cell phones out for an educational purpose. That's it, correct, Mr. Wong? Okay.
I have another.
More discussion?
Yeah, I guess what I was just going to point out, I believe the code of conduct also gives the principals and teachers the flexibility whether or not to be more stringent with how a student is disciplined. There's a little bit of teachers can be a little flexible too. So
yes.
According to the code of conduct, they don't have to enforce it if they feel that it's not something that was flagrantly wrong that they did. So I guess what I'm saying is, if somebody does violate it, and like a younger student does, perhaps the teacher could say there's a policy coming, but for now, put your phone aside. I mean, it could be as simple as that.
I agree. Our current policy supports what we are attempting to do. We just want to strike out that one sentence to support even further what we were attempting to do.
We don't need to take any action at all tonight for you to go ahead with the policy we have in place, correct?
That's correct.
So I don't know how we move about this, but I don't see any reason to take action tonight. If Anthony can get done what he needs to get done without us going through this minutia, we can figure this out at a later date.
Okay, so to be clear then, we have a motion right now and a second to waive policy. Let's vote on that. If there's no more discussion on that subject. All in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed?
I'm opposed.
Nay. Okay, so that amendment fails, and now we will vote on passing this policy 443.5 for a first reading only. Any further discussion?
Clarification.
Yes.
So if we pass this, it isn't policy, it's going to come back in refined format?
Right, we're only passing it
Okay.
for first reading.
And Anthony can still get his way with what he needs to get done.
Clear. The only thing is, the thing about the teachers is in there until we bring it back for a second reading.
I'm not worried about that.
Yeah, okay. All in favor?
Aye.
Aye. And, Mr. Bonds, when you bring this back, perhaps you could have something in there about the middle school, the intermediate school as well.
It will be addressed.
Thank you. Okay, the policy passes as presented. Next item, policy 185, Rule 1, Standing Board Committee Rules. Are you planning to discuss these all together? 185.1, Fiscal Committee, 185.2, Students Committee, 185.3, Staff Committee, 185.4, Infrastructure Committee, and 185.5, Communication Committee. Mr. Larson?
Okay, so we're looking at the packet that Michelle left for us with revised. What's in the packet is no longer accurate. So I'm not prepared to talk about and modify the composition of the committees at this time. So what I would like to focus on tonight would just be policy 185.3 for the staff committee, policy 185.4 185.4 for infrastructure and 185.5 for the communication committee. And I'm looking at the revisions in the duties of the committees, trying to take out, trying to make clear that the committees wouldn't do anything that the board itself wouldn't do, and more as a conduit of information for the board. So for the staff committee, number 6, rather than make recommendations to the board on professional learning communities and professional development, it would be informed about PLCs and professional development. So I'm only asking approval of the revisions made in the and the duties of the committees, and not the compositions.
Is that for every committee?
Right.
Or did we make, are there changes on everyone?
I think you said 185.3, 4, and 5.
Okay.
What about policy 185 rule 1? How is that fitting?
That was a part of the composition because it referred to the definition of a citizen or community member, and so I would like to bring that back at the next business meeting after I iron everything out with the composition.
Okay. He's going to make, or Nora, would you make a motion? Or Kyle, would you like to make the motion?
Oh, sure. So I'd have you very specific, though.
Pardon?
I'd have you very specific about saying only A, 6, 7.
Because you
I think.
just omitting the changes in C. That's it.
Okay. So all policies in one motion?
Omitting the changes in committee composition and all of them.
So I move
And this will
approval
be first
of
reading.
policies 18.53 staff committee with the exclusion of the changes in section C, the revisions in 185.4 for the infrastructure committee, excluding section C, and policy 185.5 for the communication committee, omitting section C.
Is there a second?
I'll second for discussion purposes.
Okay, I'd like to talk about this for a moment. Mr. Larson, I appreciate you putting in all the work on this. We had a discussion, I had a discussion with the superintendent as well. When we created these committees, we, without intent, made some of the committee duties actually more administrative duties. And we want these to be committees that would reflect board work. And like we used to have a committee with 3 board members, well, the composition is different now, but the focus should be the same and our duties should be the same or similar. So what we did was we looked at which one of these would be out of line for a board to be actually doing. And so we changed on the staff committee. Instead of having the committee make recommendations to the board about PLCs and professional development, actually doing what a board would do and asking for a presentation on these and having the staff come and present. And, you know, when the staff comes to present, the committee is free to say, we'd like you to look into this or tell us about this and come back and, you know, share more with us later. And that I think that, and Dr. Childs, correct me if I'm wrong, but I think that's what we need to do as board members is say, we have an interest in this. Could you tell us about it? And when our administrators hear that, they know there's a reason we're asking. And I think that's a cue to them to have a look at it and talk to us about it and see what they can do. And there won't always be something that they can change, but I think it's important for them to know what people are concerned about and for us to stick to board roles, even in these committees, and not try to do administrative work. So that's why we changed the staff committee to say that we would be informed about these things, receive updates on these things, but not giving directions. On infrastructure committee, the only one we found a need to change was number 3, study and make recommendations to the board on purchasing and selling of properties. The reason for that is because that's usually done in closed session. And we decided when we formed these committees, nothing, of course, would be in closed session in these committees. It would all come to the board if it's something for closed session discussion. So that was really just an oversight because we took a lot of things from our policies at the time and moved them into where they would fit. So that was an oversight. Communication committee, we found that number 6, it said discuss methods, it said increase community engagement. Well, right there, you're doing the work of staff. If you're on a committee and you're actively increasing community engagement through social media, website, newspaper, that would mean that someone on the committee could go start a Facebook page, without administration being behind it or something like that. So we said instead of saying that we will do it, say that we will discuss methods to do it. That's part of the work of the committee. And that's the reason for these changes. Like Mr. Larson said, there were also some ideas about changing the structure, the composition rather. And we thought a little bit more about that today and thought we'd bring back some better suggestions for that next month. But for now, we would like to get straight these changes so that we are doing board work in these committees.
I've talked about before. I still think these committees are set up to micromanage. I'm looking forward to our governance meeting with superintendent on this whole matter of how committees should be structured and what is the board's responsibility versus what is staff's responsibility. There's still too much in here that to me is information that should come from the superintendent, from what he works with his administration staff and teachers, and making recommendations to the board. And our job is to make sure the policies and finances support that if we agree with what he brings to the board. So we can pass this, but I'm looking forward to a more structured discussion with the superintendent and the board together to actually talk about what makes the best sense for this board and superintendent's office to work together.
Okay, any other discussion? Ms. Gard?
I think with the motion that's been made, because it's in our packet, that we were going to consider moving forward policy 185 Rule 1, that there should be a separate motion to table that one.
That's what I was planning to have for that.
Okay, and then for a point of order, because we're approaching 9 o'clock, there is a policy that says if our meeting goes beyond 2 hours of our start time, we need to have a motion to go beyond that.
Okay, I'm not sure if that's a privilege motion, so maybe we could pass this while
Okay,
we're on track. And then come back to that. Thank you so much. Okay, so we have a motion and a second to pass the policies 185.3, 185.4, 185.5, omitting the changes in committee composition on each of these. So omitting section C changes and leaving it as previously written. Is there any more discussion on this? All in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Any opposed? Okay, the changes pass, and now the other policy we had here. First of all, could I have a motion to extend the time? And thank you, Ms. Barr, for reminding me about that.
I would like to make a motion that we extend the time beyond the 2-hour limit. We are approaching 9 o'clock, so just to extend our meeting.
Second?
I'll second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Okay, meeting will be extended, and now we can go on to the remaining policy here. Mr. Larson, if you could, please.
So I move to table Policy 185, Rule 1, Standing Board Committee Rules, 185.1, Fiscal Committee, and 185.2, Students Committee until our next business meeting.
Could I give a point of clarification? Are these, didn't we just vote on these?
No, we voted on 185.3, 185.4,
Oh,
and
okay.
185.5.
And the ones you're tabling are 180,
5.1 and 185.2. And 185 row 1.
okay, the top row there. Okay. Is there a second for tabling these?
I think Nora.
Nora seconded, all right. Any discussion?
So this is just involving the composition and the
Yes.
qualifications.
These will come back again. We'll table these until next month's business meeting. All in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Any opposed? Okay, so policies 185, row 1, and 185.1 and 185.2 are tabled until the September meeting. Thank you. Next is approval of personnel recommendations. I need a motion for that, please.
I move for approval of the personnel recommendations Exhibit A and B as presented in closed session.
Any discussion?
Are we including the ones from August 14th?
Yes. All right, any other discussion? All in favor of personnel recommendation approval?
Aye.
Aye. Any opposed? Okay, the personnel recommendations are approved. Thank you. Now we're to discussion items. We have the discussion of the Beloit Memorial High School parking fees. I asked for this to be on the agenda simply because of the change that we are making to closing 4th Street. And this year, parking fees are $100 for a student who wants to drive to school. Something I want to tell members that may not know this is there's something called the city option, where in the transportation, DPI's transportation laws, a district in a city with a public transportation system can say, we're not going to provide busing, we're going to have students take the city transportation. So our high school students do not receive, I think possibly unless they live in Lathers Woods. I'm almost positive about that. I spoke to the DPI once about that. Lathers Woods is the only place where high school students are bused from. So anyone living any amount of distance, even if it's 4 miles from the high school, doesn't get bused. They have to find another way, either city bus or get dropped off by a parent or drive or carpool. So that's the reason behind this discussion, and I thought it was a good time to have it with the beginning of school and the closing of 4th Street. Dr. Childs, would you like to say anything?
Sure. It's extremely common throughout 2 states that I've served in, and districts in all of them, that students are charged to park and use the parking facilities. One, because in most cases, and I realize there may be some exception here in Beloit, but in most cases it's because there is transportation available, either public transportation, which is subsidized through collaboration between the municipal government and the school board, or regular school bus, the yellow bus transportation, and making it unnecessary for students to drive. The law in Wisconsin, I believe, is that a student who lives more than 1.5 miles from the attendance center that she or he is assigned to is entitled to transportation to and from school. The cost, candidly, in most districts is designed to discourage and limit the amount of student driving that takes place. Some of that may be from a certain amount of overcaution regarding concerns about student reckless driving and students leaving school grounds without permission, and schools potentially secreting things in their vehicles that would not be acceptable on school property, like alcohol, or, for that matter, weapons. Those are all the general rationale that most high schools use for discouraging student parking by charging a fee, but there is another component to it that is important and I think speaks to us, since we are going to be adding parking to the high school, and that is that vehicles driving on parking lots necessarily create wear and tear. They have to be maintained. Striping has to be repainted periodically, patching has to be done over a period of time. It all has to be torn back up and then relaid new blacktop, and those costs have to be absorbed by the district, and when students drive, there are more vehicles making use, and therefore there is more frequent need to do the repairs to the parking lot. I would certainly expect that there are some students who drive who may otherwise be eligible for subsidized or free lunches, for whom driving to school may be a hardship. There are also those students who are involved in off-campus dual credit programs, perhaps at the technical college, or I guess it's now UW Whitewater at Rock County. Students who are going to apprenticeships and internships at various businesses, and they would have good reason to be driving because they'd have to be leaving during the school day to go to their places of employment. So there are arguments to be had on both sides. I think what I would suggest to the board is that we take an opportunity to listen to Dr. Ramos and his thoughts on student parking and student parking fees at the high school. And I am sure by the time you reach your next business meeting, he'll have had sufficient experience that he'll be able to talk about it with some authority. You know, I'm kind of talking into a paper bag here because I haven't seen what happens at the high school with student parking and where and how. But I think we leave it as is with the understanding that it is subject to change. And, you know, if the board decides at some point that you want to change policy and simply say change practice and simply say we're waiving cost altogether for student drivers, you could do that. Might be best if you were to simply say that tonight that you'd like to see the $100 fee broken down by semester so that students pay $50 the first semester, and then if you change your mind and decide that you don't want to charge students at all, they don't have to make that payment for the second semester. And if you retain it, then they pay.
Mr. Clinton?
Just a question, since school starts, what are we doing right now?
Right now, the present practice is that students driving to school need to get a parking permit if they're going to use the school parking lot. And the cost of that, I understand this year. Last year, I think it was $75, and this year, I believe it's $100.
But have they already applied and been given their permits?
I'm quite certain some students have. I don't know that all have.
Because it used to be a lottery system, and it was very desirable to get one.
Mm-hmm.
And that was in a smaller lot. We've got more parking than my old days. My only concern is we're going to change the policy for people who have already paid their fees and got their sticker and school's starting. What are we really going to do? We go back and tell people you don't get your parking pass anymore. So I would like to hear what our principal at the high school has to say before even having that discussion, quite frankly.
I think that's the fairest thing you can do.
I think also having probably Sean in on this conversation would be
Yes.
appropriate to find out the cost involved for repaving and maintenance on the parking lots as well.
Mm-hmm.
Keep in mind, a lot of public people use these lots, and we have a lot of events, so it's not just the students that have wear and tear in the parking lot, and to throw that back on the students, that you're the ones that have to pay for this when they're not the entire issue. I think we have to consider that as well.
Good points. And I have a couple of questions. Do we have currently, Ms. Armstrong or Mr. Winters, do we have currently any kind of policy that says students who are on free and reduced lunch do not pay the $100? No. Okay. And I know the DPI says that, or the state law is that we can charge fees for students, but it has to be for actual cost. I don't know how we justify $100. I don't know how we justify it going up $25 in 1 year. It went up 25%.
I do believe that it was $100 last year.
Well, at one point it went up from 75. When my kids were there, it was 50 and then 65 and then 75, and now we're at 100. Is it like everything else where it just automatically goes up every year?
I don't know. I would have to do some more research to figure out how those costs were applied.
Mm-hmm.
I make the educated assumption at this point that those are considered optional fees, and so we do waive fees for people who have applied and showed their eligibility for fee waivers, but those are for sports and curricular fees, not for optional fees.
Right.
So we could have to look more.
Okay. I mean, I don't mind. I always like to get input from the administrators and staff, but in this case, we're bringing it for a reason, because of no parking on North Street and Middle Street now. So I just feel like, these kids, from what I heard, kids that can't afford parking were on North Street and on Middle Street. And now we're saying you have to park in the lot.
They have a car. Cars cost money.
Mhm.
So if you can drive a car and put gas in the car, you can afford to pay for parking. You're going to have that policy. This thing about we only can't park on the street for free, yeah, you still can park. There's places to park. And I go back to what Dr. Child said. I'd like to hear what Principal Ramos has to say, and then make a decision at that time. I'm not looking to make a decision tonight on this.
Do any other administrators have any input so we can just think about this until our next meeting? Is there anything else anyone would like to add? Okay. Well, I would appreciate if everybody would think it over, and we can see how it goes first day of school, see what that parking lot looks like, and get feedback from Dr. Ramos and staff at the high school, and I'm sure we might get some feedback from parents as well, or students.
I have a question.
Yes.
So I agree with everything that's been said, especially finding feedback out, how it's all started. But what if, when kids start school, but what if some have paid the $100 already? And then we'll just get they'll get a reimbursement?
Or it could go toward another fee that they have
Okay.
for an activity, or it could be carried over to the next year.
Okay.
Or refunded. Yeah, that's something we can worry about if we decide to change it for now. All right, thank you. And now we're at the number 11B, Ad Hoc Committee Recommendation for the Code of Conduct Policy.
I'll be brief. Districts are required to review their code of conduct really on an annual basis, and I believe DPI says that it needs to be very much like Title I requirements are, that it involves community participation, parents, and staff. And I'm simply proposing to convene an ad hoc committee that will be comprised of those components, and reflect the diversity of our community at the same time. Review the code of conduct beginning probably in early November, and try to bring sometime in late April or May whatever recommendations may evolve out of that process in terms of any revisions to, or for that matter, reification of the existing code of conduct as it stands currently.
Okay, Mr. Wong?
Along with that, I would like to see, or I would propose that the ad hoc committee specifically addresses constructive ideas as how to best handle the repetitive discipline problems of a few students at all levels. I realize that there's many mental and trauma and family issues that, that no kid should have to face. But how fair is it for staff and all the other 98% of the population of students to be disrupted by a select few? But understanding that all students have to be served, I'm confident that a good ad hoc committee looking at ideas as how to address this could be very beneficial for not only the students but the staff morale as well.
One of the biggest complaints I heard, and I hear it still today, is the inconsistent enforcement of the code of conduct. The teachers were very loud and clear about not feeling the administration had their back. And when you talk to teachers today, nothing's been done to change anything. And so all we're looking for is, are we going to be consistent with all kids of all races to make sure that the code of conduct is enforced equally across the board? And so that teachers know that their back is, that the administration has their back when they have a problem student that's over and over, and there's been, teachers have been threatened, sworn at, and nothing happens to them. And I don't care who it is, we can't allow that behavior in our schools. And if you look at the loss of teachers over the last 2 years and students, a lot of it is because of that issue. So I would, whatever we do, let's be consistent and let's be fair to everybody.
I think that's important. I would point out something, and I do know and have heard secondhand. I've yet to hear it firsthand from teachers because I haven't really had access to them. I have heard secondhand that there are those teachers who have deep concern that the code of conduct is not being enforced equitably, or in their view, in some cases, at all. Data is often very helpful in enlightening us and helping us to understand some things. And I'm going to forward Dr. Ramos' email from today to you board members in the weekly memo on Friday, because I think there's some data there that might be helpful in your understanding about the complaining that you're hearing. For instance, these numbers aren't hard and fast, I will tell you that right now, because I'm doing it from memory, and at my age that's always dangerous. But it is something like 30% of the high school staff are responsible for over 60% of the referrals that the high school gets. And something like in excess of 40% of the referrals from last year were things that, pursuant to the code of conduct, should have been dealt with by the teacher in the classroom and never referred to the office to begin with. And I think we have to kind of keep that perspective a little bit when we listen to people expressing their concerns. My own experience in districts far away from Beloit is that the loudest complainers are the teachers who want everybody else to solve their problem and they don't want to deal with it. And that's just not going to happen in my tenure, frankly. But having said that, we do need to be sensitive to the fact that the code of conduct does need to be equitably enforced across all students, regardless.
And that's why one of the things I'd like to see discussed when we make this ad hoc committee is, do we want the same code of conduct at every level? Mm-hmm. Or do we want a different code of conduct written for the lower grades than is written? To ask 18-year-olds and 4-year-olds to have the same rules, or to expect them to have the same rules, for me is not reasonable. So that's something I'd like to look at. And I mean, it's clear that we have problems in this school district with discipline. We've heard that loud and clear, and all of us are aware of it. Are the problems in enforcing the code of conduct, or are the problems in the code of conduct? I think we'll find out with this ad hoc committee.
And I think you'll find that the ultimate answer is it's some of both.
Yes. And one thing I would like to ask Dr. Childs is, there was a motion months ago, I believe in May maybe, for the Students Committee to form this ad hoc committee and to study the code of conduct. I hear you going down that road now with this discussion, but could we go ahead and turn this over to Mr. Wong and say, take this to the Students Committee? And of course, with your assistance, get this ad hoc committee started?
If I may suggest, I think it's not a good idea to have two different groups working in parallel on the same subject.
Oh, no, it would not be his committee. It would only be, his committee would actually be Mr. Wong, that through his committee forms an ad hoc committee with the people you were discussing. It would not be two different groups, but you know, an ad hoc committee can either be formed by the board as a board ad hoc committee, or by a committee as a standing committee's ad hoc committee.
My view of it is that this is staff work, and the staff should be doing it, and I would like to be the person that's chairing that committee.
Yeah, we still approve it. So, Dr. I think he's correct. I mean, it should come from
Well, we'll have to
him
look at
and
our
his.
policy.
But we're
Would
the
you like
ones
to
that actually
share
have to
that?
approve it.
Okay, maybe, Nora, could you share what you have?
Actually, I was kind of waiting to see where the conversation was going, but I did bring copies of our ad hoc advisory committee and what the board approves, and what Dr. Childs is recommending. We would have to give him the okay to go forward with that, but you are correct. There are two ways to go about an ad hoc committee. It would be through the committees or the board. In the past, also, the administration would have one with staff. What we're talking about is having one kind of like what Mr. Bonds had about a year ago, where it's broadly, the board defines what you want on this ad hoc committee. But the policies are 186, Policy 186, Rule 1, and Policy 186 is ad hoc advisory committees, and basically it says they should be appointed only when there's a definite function to be performed, which we have. Board ad hoc advisory committee should be broadly representative, which we've discussed, and it can be appointed by a standing committee, which we've discussed. A recommendation should be based on research and fact. Recommendation should be considered advisory to the board or standing committee. So that's policy 186, and 186 Rule 1 goes more into the specifics, such as timeline, goal of what you want to achieve, the objectives, and that's clearly spelled out. Some of you who have served on some of these ad hoc committees do know that it's a broad spectrum of the community. So I think we're going in the right direction, but I kind of wanted to back up a little bit. It's been my experience being on the board that we do look at that policy every year, and I think Emily has made quite a few recommendations to the board in making those changes in the past. So I think we have been abiding by what is expected of us, but I think we are at a point to have an ad hoc committee to just start at ground one and really look the whole thing over. I really like that idea. My only concern is being on this board only till April and having lots of information to process that maybe we won't know what's discussed or be able to offer some feedback. This board, and when you're suggesting May, it would be probably 3 new board members, and I'm just wondering if they're if we put a timeline on it, maybe we would have a certain topic or issues in updating the policy reported to the board, maybe like in March or something, so that this board could have some input in it. So those are my thoughts.
Sure, there's nothing to prevent us from moving the timeline up. I very candidly, intentionally suggested April or May because of the potential for board changes, but there's nothing that says it has to be a future board that's going to act on this, even though it will be a future board that will be in place when the policy becomes effective. And given the fact that, you know, it may ultimately wind up that there are no really major revisions to the code of conduct anyway when all is said and done, we just don't know. Moving it up doesn't hurt anything. We can certainly do that. It's not a problem. The other thing is that, and one of the things I will be discussing in the workshop when we do it, is that, you can, as a board, direct me to bring to you, or have staff bring to you, reports on how we're progressing and monitor it. And you could do it as frequently as monthly, or you could do it every other month, or you could do it once, or, whatever is your preference and comfort level as a board. But you certainly could monitor our work that way.
Well, what I wanted to let new members know is that I did consult the WASB attorney about this a few months back. And because our policy says that we will review the code of conduct annually, and the state law says that it's developed by an ad hoc committee, he said by saying that you're going to do it annually, you have to have an ad hoc committee annually. That was his advice.
That's right. That's right.
I don't expect every year we're going to have changes, but I think we're long overdue for a really thorough look at this. And through an ad hoc committee is the suggestion of WASB. And, go ahead, Mr. Wong.
One of the duties in the Students Committee, it specifically states, study, review, and make recommendations to the board annually regarding district code of conduct and athletic codes. So are we overriding that? Is that?
I personally, I mean, okay, in our policy here, it says the board will not form an ad hoc committee without seeking the advice of the superintendent, and that's what we're doing here tonight. Seeking the advice and seeing if we can come to consensus that we do need this ad hoc committee, and your policy for your committee says that you will annually have a look at this. So I guess what you're saying is you're willing to do that through appointing an ad hoc committee and not have your committee do it, but have an ad hoc committee do it, right?
I'm just pointing out the duties of the Students Committee right now, but also the other question I would have is it worth looking at or considering separating out the review of the code of conduct and exploring the discipline issues as two separate items?
It is two separate. That's what I was trying to say earlier. Was that we've got two separate things here, but.
Well, I think to make any amendments to the code of conduct, we're going to have to do those things that we should be expected to do with everything, and that is data-driven. Dr. Ramos, for instance, has presented me and his staff, and I will share with you some data. And I think that part of what we've got to do, however we go about this, is to collect data and look at it and see if, in fact, the data supports what we all think we know, because very often it doesn't, and whether, in fact, the data indicates that there need to be some changes, and then monitor those changes going forward to see if they are producing any kind of change in results. That is a true board function. It's up to the wishes of the board as to how you proceed, but I believe that I would like to work on this with an ad hoc committee, and not hand-picking anybody in terms of who goes on it, but I do want it to be broadly representative of the diversity and I want it to be broadly representative of all the grade levels. So, and both administration and teachers, as well as parents and community.
So this is the review of the code of conduct, and then I guess because my concern here is time of it. I mean, that's a monster document that's going to take months to go through, even with an ad hoc.
Yes.
And I guess one question I would have and concern, because it's been raised to me by several individuals, not just recently and over the last several years, is the discipline issues. And I guess are we pushing that off?
Nope. I think what we're doing is saying we have a code of conduct in place, and we need to assure that it's being enforced pursuant to board policy, and that it's being done equitably. It's unknown at this point whether equitable implementation of the existing code of conduct is going to result in changes in terms of student behavior and the things that are happening. We aren't going to know until we have some experience, but the good thing about it is that while we're collecting data, we can be collecting data as well in terms of what the current code of conduct is accomplishing in terms of whether or not we're seeing any reduction in student referrals, more importantly, in whether we're seeing a reduction in inappropriate and unacceptable student behaviors. Yeah, it's going to take time to go through that, but once it's done, you're going to have data that's going to be much more useful in terms of driving how it gets implemented.
Okay, so what it sounds like is we have two needs here. One is to assess the implementation of the current code of conduct, correct? And that, I can't see any board role in that. That seems purely administrative. Would you agree with that?
Yep.
And then the other need is to form an ad hoc committee. And we have policy on that. And I understand Mr. Wong's desire to get started on that soon. Like Ms. Gard said, April will be here before we know it.
Yep.
Now, what if those go on at the same time? Your work and the beginning of the ad hoc committee. And I don't think that one would really have effect on the other, right? I mean, you're going to...
Well, I would hope that one would inform the other.
Well, inform, but I mean, not necessarily. Like, they might want to change something in the code of conduct. It doesn't mean because it's not being enforced. But I see changes of the code of conduct being more like, it hasn't really been changed in so many years. I feel like the changes aren't going to be like, well, if we make this tougher, then it'll really be enforced. I don't think it's going to be like that. I think that we're looking at different issues when we look at the code of conduct, like the one I said about why do we have one code for ages 4 through 21. That's really the thing I'd like to see looked at. But I don't think it has to do with enforcing it. The problem we have has to do with enforcing it, and maybe more than it has to do with the code.
That's very possible.
Yeah.
On the other hand, it may be that there are things in the code that just simply are not easily enforceable.
Right.
That happens too.
And that might be a change that I could see, the committee advising us on too. If there's something that just can't be enforced.
Can I make a suggestion? I mean, we can have this conversation all night, but Dr. Childs wants to start an ad hoc committee. I would recommend that John be part of that ad hoc committee, and that they pick the members. And John, if you're acceptable to that, I'm throwing your name in there, but you've had a lot of experience in the past. And then let's start down that path.
But we have policy that states clearly how this should be started. Are you saying that because we want to follow policy, we don't like waiving policy. Are you saying, see, I'd like you to just follow the ad hoc committee policy that we have.
Which says what?
That.
Well, so the public understands what is it? Who's appointing it? We are appointing it?
Oh, no,
So-
in this case, I would like the student committee to appoint it working with Dr. Childs.
I have an issue with the student committee doing it, quite frankly.
They're not it's the chair of the student committee.
I'm fine with John being involved in it. I think to not have the administration be part of it is a mistake.
No, you didn't let me finish. The chair of the student committee would appoint the committee with Dr. Childs. They're going to be meeting and discussing it. He's not going to do anything that Dr. Childs doesn't
I'm
want.
fine with that as long as it's an ad hoc committee under John and Dr. Childs, but not the actual committee itself.
Right. No, the committee doesn't. Yeah, Mr. Wong, as chair, would be the one to appoint the committee. Right, Nora, according to policy?
The committee can assign an ad hoc committee, and we can charge Dr. Childs with an ad hoc committee. You could actually have, according to policy, you could have two with a different.
No, I don't want to.
Okay, then I think our choices are, we as a board can say either through John's committee, which is already spelled out there, there's going to be an ad hoc committee, and working with Dr. Childs, which I think you are suggesting, or we can say to Dr. Childs, you put this together as sort of an administration.
That's what I'm saying with the, are we following the policy? With the evaluation of is code of conduct being followed, that's what I say. Dr. Childs should be in charge of that. That's not an ad hoc committee.
You need one chair according to the rules.
I think we're misunderstanding each other.
Well, maybe so, but the ad hoc committee is supposed to have one chair, a
Right.
timeline, and a charge.
Right. And when the ad hoc committee is formed, a chair is elected, correct?
Correct.
Okay. So what I'm talking about is Dr. Childs' other suggestion that he look at the enforcement of the code.
Okay.
That's his thing, that's his administration team.
Yeah.
And we should not get involved in that. Does everyone agree with that, or is there
Yes.
someone?
Yes.
Okay, all right.
Yes.
Do you agree with that also?
Yeah, so the students committee would take on the review of the code of conduct.
You wouldn't take it on, you would.
We assign form
Right.
an ad hoc committee that would involve administration and staff.
Correct.
Jeff, to answer your question
Working with
there.
Dr. Childs on deciding who would be on that would
Correct.
be the best way to do it.
Yep.
That's fine.
Right.
Yes.
Yeah.
And then we'd
I'm
be
fine with
following
that.
policy,
And the motion in May to send it to the student committee.
pardon?
Because it was in April, May, we had a motion to send
Yes,
that,
we
so
already-
so this would be in compliance with
Right,
that motion
right.
that passed also.
Yes, we voted for this months ago.
What's that?
We don't need to do anything.
We don't. You
No.
can do it at your committee level with the help of
Yeah.
Dr. Childs. Yes.
Okay.
We can work that out.
Okay, now, where are we at? Items of interest for consideration at future meetings. We don't have yet, Michelle, we don't have that document up online that I want to have.
We'll get it done this week.
Yeah, I'm not pushing, I just want to make clear that we don't have it yet, so we're still asking here, any suggestions for future meeting topics? Whether it's discussion or anything else you'd like to have. Okay, well, feel free to email me with anything. Dr. Charles, is there anything that you feel we should have on a future agenda?
Well, there are probably a number of things, but I think we need to get the September board meeting and business meeting and frankly, the governance workshop out of the way first.
Okay. All right. Announcement of future board meeting dates. Infrastructure, and please, anyone jump in and correct me if this is wrong. Infrastructure will meet September 6th at 5 o'clock. Fiscal Committee will meet September 10th at 5 o'clock. Student Committee will meet September 11 at 4 o'clock. Staff Committee will meet September 11 at 5 o'clock. Communication Committee will meet September 7 at 2 o'clock p.m.
September 27th.
September 27, 2 o'clock p.m. Thank you. And the next business meeting will be September 24th, 2018, 7 o'clock. And something that I wanted to say when Ms. Armstrong and Mr. Winters were up there, I don't think last meeting I got a chance to thank you for filling in for us when we needed you to fill in the absence of our executive director of business. So we appreciate you doing a lot of work there. Excellent work. Thank you very much.
Those are all notes.
Okay. All right. Is there any business that we have not tended to, Michelle? Okay. Have a motion to adjourn?
Move to adjourn.
I'll second.
Okay, all in favor?
Aye.
Aye. This meeting's adjourned. Thank you all very much.
Thank you.